You are standing in the middle of a forest. No phone. No compass. No road signs. The trees look the same in every direction. Within 10 minutes, most people today would panic. Your ancestors did this every single day for 300,000 years. And they were never lost, not once. Think about that. For the vast majority of human existence, there were no maps, no GPS satellites, no landmarks carved into stone with arrows pointing home. And yet early humans crossed continents. They navigated across open ocean. They memorized territories spanning hundreds of square miles, every river, every ridge, every season-specific water source, with nothing but their minds and their senses. How? The answer reveals something extraordinary about the human brain. Something modern life has almost completely switched off. Let us go back. Way back. Roughly 70,000 years ago, a group of anatomically modern humans, people with brains identical in structure to yours, left the African continent and began moving into unknown territory. This was not a planned expedition. There were no scouts who returned with maps. These people walked into land no human had ever seen, and they kept going. They crossed into the Arabian Peninsula, pushed through South Asia, and eventually reached Australia, a journey of tens of thousands of miles across terrain that shifted with every season. They arrived. Every single time. How did they do it? The first answer is the landscape itself. Early humans were readers of the world in a way that is almost incomprehensible to modern people. They did not look at a forest and see trees. They saw a library. The direction that moss grew on bark. The way certain animals moved at dusk. The angle of shadows at midday. The specific smell of water carried on wind from the west. Anthropologist Liebenberg, who spent decades studying the sand people of the Kalahari, one of the world's oldest continuous cultures, documented how their trackers could identify an individual animal by a single partial footprint in sand, then predict where that animal would be hours later based on the time of day, the temperature, and the terrain ahead. Navigation was not a separate skill. It was woven into everything. The second answer is the stars. Every major indigenous culture on Earth developed a sophisticated relationship with the night sky. The Polynesian navigators of the Pacific, some of history's greatest wayfinders, memorized the rising and setting points of over 200 stars. They knew which star sat directly above which island at which time of year. They felt the swells of the ocean against the hull of their canoe and could identify which island chain was causing those swells from hundreds of miles away. Anthropologist Finney, who helped reconstruct traditional Polynesian navigation techniques in the 1970s with the Polynesian Voyaging Society, demonstrated that a skilled wayfinder could sail from Hawaii to Tahiti, 2,400 miles of open ocean, with no instruments. Just sky, swell, wind, and trained attention. Your ancestors had that same sky. Every night, above every campfire, for 300,000 years. The third answer is memory. Not passive memory, not the kind where you try to recall where you left your keys. Active, structured, intentional memory built through movement. Australian Aboriginal cultures developed one of the most sophisticated navigation systems ever recorded, the songline. A songline is a route across the landscape encoded as a song. The melody, the rhythm, the specific words of the song described the terrain, a hill here, a dry riverbed there, a sacred water source exactly 12 verses in. To navigate, you sang. The song was the map. Archaeologist and cognitive scientist David Lewis documented this in his landmark 1976 work on traditional Australian navigation, revealing that some songlines stretched for thousands of miles across the continent, passed down across generations without a single word written down. The landscape was the text. The body was the library. So let us reconstruct what navigation looked like for your ancestors on an ordinary day. You wake before dawn. You already know which direction east is, not because someone told you, but because you have watched the sun rise from this camp for the past 4 days and your body has logged it automatically. You are heading toward a river your group visited 2 seasons ago, roughly 2 days of walking to the north-northeast. You know this because your grandfather described the route to you in a story when you were 7 years old. The story mentioned a double-peaked hill visible from a specific ridge, and a grove of a particular type of tree that grows only near water. You have never been there yourself. But you know exactly where it is. You walk. You check the sun's position every hour. You notice the birds are flying in a pattern that suggests open water ahead. You find the double-peaked hill exactly where the story said it would be. You arrive at the river before dark. This was not magic. It was a different kind of intelligence, one that modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand. In 2014, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded to John O'Keefe, Maybrit Moser, and Edvard Moser for their discovery of the brain's internal GPS system, place cells and grid cells in the hippocampus that create a cognitive map of space. These cells fire in specific patterns as you move through an environment, building a detailed internal representation of where you are, where you have been, and where you are going. Every human brain has this system. It is ancient. It predates our species, but here is what the research also shows. When you stop using this system, when you outsource navigation to a device, it atrophies. A 2020 study published in Nature Communications by researchers at University College London found that people who regularly use GPS navigation show reduced hippocampal activity when navigating compared to people who navigate without assistance. The internal map weakens from disuse. The grid cells still fire, but less. And with less precision, your ancestors' hippocampi were running at full capacity every single day of their lives. Every journey was a training session. Every story told around a fire was a navigational download. Every song was a route encoded in rhythm so it could not be forgotten. There is something else worth understanding. Early human navigation was not a solo skill. It was communal. Knowledge of territory was one of the most valuable things a group possessed. Elders who held detailed mental maps of water sources, seasonal food locations, and safe paths through dangerous terrain were not just respected, they were essential. The loss of one knowledgeable elder could be a survival crisis for an entire band. This is one reason why the transfer of geographical knowledge through story, song, and ritual was so serious, so carefully maintained. It was not folklore. It was survival infrastructure. The Inuit of the Arctic developed a system of snow landmarks called encoded, stone figures erected at key navigation points across the tundra, combined with a deep reading of wind-packed snow patterns, which vary predictably by direction and season. A skilled Inuit navigator could determine their position, wind direction, and the weather coming from 3 days away by reading the texture of snow beneath their feet. Researcher Claudio Aporta documented in the early 2000s how elder Inuit navigators could guide a sled team through a complete whiteout, zero visibility, no landmarks visible, using nothing but the angle of wind-packed snow ridges underfoot. They were reading a map written in ice. All of this points to a single uncomfortable truth about modern life: you were born with one of the most sophisticated navigation systems ever evolved. A brain that can build three-dimensional spatial maps of territory, encode routes in narrative and song, read the subtle cues of landscape, star, wind, and weather into coherent directional knowledge. A brain that, in the right conditions, can guide you across a continent. And for most of your life, you have been handing that job to a 4-inch screen. This is not a moral judgment. GPS is useful. But there is a difference between a tool you choose to use and a crutch your brain has learned to depend on. Research consistently shows that people who regularly navigate without assistance have better spatial memory, stronger hippocampal function, and a richer, more detailed mental model of the physical world they inhabit. Your ancestors did not just know where they were. They knew where everything was. Every water source within a 3-day walk. Every seasonal migration route. Every dangerous pass and every safe crossing. They carried their world inside them. The next time you find yourself somewhere unfamiliar, try something. Put the phone in your pocket. Look up. Find the sun. Notice which way the wind is moving. Look for the hill, the ridge, the tree line, the water. Let your brain do what it was designed to do for 300,000 years, you might be surprised how much it still remembers.